Hello and welcome to DataFAIR 2022. My name is Mariam Hosseini. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect at Elucidata and your host for today. Successful AI ML initiatives demand clean, linked, and thus fair data. At Elucidata, we believe that good data leads to good machine learning and thereby good patient outcomes. Focusing on this theme, we have two separate tracks: data-centric AI and fair transformation. Note that these tracks will happen simultaneously, so be sure to join the track which best suits your needs. But before that, we have some exciting keynote sessions lined up for you shortly. Before that, I want to help you with some basics of the event platform so you will feel comfortable browsing around. To view the agenda, you can head over to the top of the screen to the navigation bar where you can click on agenda to view it. From there, you can choose which talks you want to attend. Please note that you can freely switch between the two tracks as you wish. If you have any questions during the talks, you can ask them directly via the chat box at the right side of the screening webpage. And to learn more about Quilt and Metabolon, which are the latest technology offerings in biopharma from Elucidata, you can visit the virtual booth by clicking on Virtual Booth on the left corner of your lobby. You can also avail free single-cell data audit to dive into data sets distributed by source, disease, cell line, and organism. Also, I've got some exciting news for folks in Boston. You can join us for the meet and greet after party this evening. Just head to the main lobby for more details. Be sure to RSVP. We would love to see you there. So starting with the talks, our first speaker for today is no stranger to any of us. Dr. Abhishek Jha is the co-founder and CEO at Elucidata. Previously, he was an early team member at Agios Pharmaceuticals that brought 3 first-in-class drugs for AML patients. He is alumni of MIT, University of Chicago, and Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. In his talk, Abhishek will discuss the second wave of digital transformation that we are witnessing. While the first was to improve collaboration and cohesion of stakeholders and processes, the second wave is more depending on setting up tools and infrastructure that will treat data as an asset that fuels successful AI ML initiatives. I'll give it to AJ.
Hey, thanks, Miriam. Can I share my screen? All right, great. Well, first, again, thank you, everyone. It's a privilege to kick off our 3rd annual event. It's becoming sort of a tradition, and I'm very excited and proud. First, I would like to thank all of you for joining us from all over the world. As of this morning, we had more than 650 registrations, which is exciting. It's a great validation of the message, the problem statement that we want to talk about. I also wanted to thank an outstanding list of speakers that we have. And these speakers are thought leaders in the industry, and they have spent their careers, they continue to spend their time talking about the promise of having fair data, as well as the challenges, the scars of how to make the data fair, how to convince people, what kind of investments to make. And we're very proud to have them today join us. Thank you for your time. And finally, I want to thank my team. A lot of people have worked very hard over many weeks to make this happen. So good luck to all of us. And I want to thank all of you before we kick this off. A point that I wanted to highlight before we get into the slides is that this year we have decided to have the conversation and with the community about the promise and the challenge of making data fair. And this is not about a particular solution, a particular technology, a particular platform, but just a problem statement and the challenges. And I believe there's a lot of interest around making data fair, and that is what we want you to invite you and participate in this conversation, contribute to it, and help us make better. More specifically, I'll be talking about our lessons that we have learned over the years and continue to refine as we deploy our own AI technology to study making data fair in life sciences R&D. And there are a couple of lessons that I'll highlight with some case studies, which we'll talk about in a few slides. Now, over the last close to 15 years that I have been part of this industry, and I guess a lot of people have talked about this trend, we see two distinct phases to this whole evolution of the infrastructure, the conversation around AI, if you will. The first generation, if you will, was around data digitization, where people were moving from paper notebooks, lab notebooks, to more digital ways to capture it. And I think we are not past it. Like, a lot of labs still use paper notebooks and whatnot, but you rarely run into conversations where you have to convince someone of the values of digitization. So I think the industry at large has embraced it, accepted it, deployed it, and to everyone's benefit. Part of this was also migration to the data which was digitized to the cloud, and again, players like Amazon and many other companies brought the technology which enabled this cloud migration. And in my own career, like not so long back, right, we would have to make a very tenuous case to our colleagues at in IT department and others to get access to cloud. The default was not that, but just a few years later, AWS or Azure platforms like that are a no-brainer, even for a very early stage company. So as much as these things are in progress, I think there's a huge adoption for digitization and cloud migration. It continues to grow. Now, that phase sets the stage up for AI adoption, which again has been talked and discussed at length. And senior leaders have co-opted this language. Interesting hires have been made at every level in life sciences, smaller companies, large companies, to enable the AI initiatives. And that essentially is asking the question as to, if all your data is on the cloud, what kind of promising discoveries you can make by leveraging the power of AI, target prediction, structure prediction, bioactivity, toxicity. There's a whole slew of problems that one can address. So we are observing this clear shift, and which is the background, the context in which Elucidata operates. And a lot of the speakers who will talk to us today are operating this background and context. Now, again, just to belabor the point, there's an anonymous report by McKinsey, which highlights some case studies where the names of the companies are not disclosed, but there's some very specific examples across the entire value chain of drug discovery, all from target identification, validation, hit identification, and further downstream processes as well. Now, a lot of us have heard about these stories, experienced them, enabled them. I don't mean to get into details of each of those case studies, but the point is, the promise of AI is more than a talking point now. It's getting realized as we speak. But of course, huge challenges remain. Another way to validate this trend that we are talking about, the industry is also putting its money where its mouth is. The number of partnerships that are being announced almost every year, and as you can see in this chart, where the partnership between established pharma companies and younger AI companies continue to grow year on year. And I believe, and as much as we can see, this trend is not going to get reversed anytime soon. Now, with all this background of promise of AI, which is getting realized as well, at least we are seeing some early signs of that. There are also huge risks to it, right? Some of them are very obvious, but you'd be surprised how often you run into them and how often companies misstep. We have had our own lessons that we have learned along the way. And I wanted to spend most of my time talking about how best to de-risk any AI initiative, right? And that's important for a variety of reasons. At the very worst, if you look at more cynically, it's a loss of time and money, right? If you go down a rabbit hole where the AI initiatives do not pan out as hoped for. And at worst, it compromises the whole interest in which I believe is a very exciting tool which can have huge outsized impact for the industry. So, if you don't think and talk and take care of these risks upfront, it would be, not serving the promise of AI very well for all the stakeholders. And just to, condense it down, like the three main takeaways that we want to highlight. One is selecting the right problem to solve. And that, again, is sounds very obvious, but I'm always amazed by how often people, including us, make this mistake. Second is having the right data, selecting the right data to solve the problem that you have chosen. And finally, infusing domain knowledge, more agnostic, domain agnostic systems and models just don't work as well. And I'll try to highlight some case studies, some from within Elucidata, some from outside, to illustrate these points. The first one is again to highlight as to how important is it to ask the right question. Is an example of an infamous example, if you will, of IBM Watson. And it's pointless to beat a dead horse. Watson had a huge promise, and a lot of us would agree that it did not live up to it. A lot of time and money was spent. The point here is that there are a lot of useful lessons here. Asking the right question, which we believe Watson was not set up to do, was a big factor in the outcome of this particular experiment. At the same time, there are some very exciting developments as well. One of them was announcement of a partnership between Bayer and Merck for a tool that was recently approved by the FDA. And this one of the reasons we think it was successful is because the question that it was asked was mostly to enable an expert, a human expert, in this case, identifying a spot in a rare form of hypertension using CT scan, not to replace the doctor, as was the aim and ambition of Watson. And once you make that slight tweak, slight pivot to the question that you're asking, I think the outcomes are dramatically different and far more successful. The second piece that I wanted to highlight again was that selecting the right data that feeds into your AI system is a critical need and a very important way to de-risk the AI initiative that you might undertake. And this, again, has been discussed at length, not just in life sciences, but other industries too. And again, seemingly it's trivial that, of course, you'd use the right data for the problem that you'd want to address, but it's notoriously hard and often not as appreciated upfront, right? Like as you get deeper into the project, you understand and refine that. And some cases, unfortunately, it's too late. One of the examples that we have dealt with is trying to predict gene expression for signature in patients with NAFLD, a form of fatty liver disease. Now, what kind of data, molecular, phenotypic, what kind of patient population, what kind of clinical diagnosis? There are a lot of specific questions, criteria, quality criteria that need to be addressed but with different stakeholders before you dive into this, any project like this. And here we have listed some bullet points, some prescriptive measures of what the quality criteria could be, but by no means it's exhaustive. And this is just to illustrate the point that selecting the right data is a critical component, often underlooked and addressed only much later in the progression of any AI project. And the final piece that I'll highlight with some case studies as well from within the company is how infusing domain knowledge into an AI system is a really game changer. Again, AI system very naively and simplistically is a component of at least two things: the code and data. Right? The code is a placeholder for the model, the AI model that you have, and data is what feeds into it. And in the background, the box that we're talking about is the domain knowledge. Without that, the models don't perform as well. And one of the examples that we have, which follows the schema that you see here, where a domain expert is assisted, not replaced, with a prediction of a model. and the model gets better as the domain expert continues to give their feedback. And this schema has worked really well in our hands for a very specific problem. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that problem here. This is the screenshot of our curation platform. And you're looking at two clinical notes. They're identical from the same source, which is captured here, the dataset ID. This is a publicly available repository of clinical notes, Mimic. And on this screenshot, you're seeing 4 fields: drug, dose, frequency, strength. And the NLP models corresponding to each 4 of them automatically tags drug, dose, frequency, strength in both in this text. Now, a domain expert, a curator in this case, curator 1, evaluates the performance of the model and says yes or no to these annotations, these entities that are being recognized by the model. Now, if you compare that to a scenario where the same domain expert had access to this note and they were asked to annotate the same 4 fields, it would have taken them at least 10 times more effort to capture that. And again, the idea here is to assist that human expert, not to replace it. Now, if as an expert, like I decide that, oh, this is not the right label, I can tag it as such, and the model would get better. The same data, say in this case the clinical note, and the same fields are also annotated for a second curator. And if both of them are in agreement, then the data set is approved. Otherwise, there's a resolution that is addressed by a third human expert. And in those cases, again, there's an opportunity for the model to keep getting better. Now, this use of BioNLP plus active learning that we have deployed and we routinely use for dozens of curators over the last 2.5 years has really helped us to curate data with remarkable accuracy and at scale, which would not have been possible otherwise. And just to show how it performs, right? The model that we have, we call it PolyBERT, which is a improvement on BERT, which was published a couple of years back by Google and is domain agnostic. Again, to get into some detail, BERT was trained on Wikipedia, and PolyBERT has been trained on very domain-specific corpus of data, which is mostly from PubMed and experimental designs of experiments that we are trying to curate. So if you look at these charts for at least 4 of the entities, cell type, tissue, cell line, and disease, PolyBERT performs as accurately as human curators do, which is also not perfect to begin with. And that's important to recognize and acknowledge, because often the expectation is that human curators would curate it perfectly, which is not the case. So the fact that PolyBERT performs better than domain agnostic BERT is a demonstration that infusing domain knowledge helps. And the second point that it can perform as well as human curators is very impressive and very assuring as well. It saves time and it allows you to do curation at scale, which would not be possible otherwise. Again, this is an example much closer to home, which we wanted to share. And I wanted to leave you with a couple of very short examples before I open up for questions. Is if the 3 points that we were talking about, the problem that you asked, the data that you feed in, and the domain knowledge that you infuse in your AI model, if those things are taken care of, suddenly you start unlocking the promise of AI in ways that are very, very promising and exciting. And to illustrate that point, I'll share one internal project that we have been working on. This is very much a work in progress, where we, since we have curated large amounts of data, we were able to build a knowledge graph to enable hypothesis generation. And there's a lot of details which I'm happy to answer and connect you to my colleagues who have worked on this. But at a high level, there are 2 papers. One that talks about a drug, thapsigargan, which has been shown to demonstrate inducing apoptosis in a form of lung cancer. And this paper and the data corresponding data is available in links, a public repository at Broad Institute. And there's another paper that talks about STAT1 and FGFR3 in skeletal dysplasia. Now, when we since we have curated the data underlying these two papers and many of such papers, they can be linked and a knowledge graph can be created. We looked at the top 5 edges, and one of the links that we were able to establish was that there was a similarity in non-small cell carcinoma and skeletal dysplasia based on molecular signatures that was hidden in number of data sets that are about non-small cell carcinoma and skeletal dysplasia, as well as genetic signatures as a function of drug treatment. Now, this linkage, which was embedded in the data, was non-obvious, is a pretty exciting find, and one can argue that this set the stage to make the case that drugs for non-small cell carcinoma can be repurposed for skeletal dysplasia. Now, this was enabled only because we had a specific question to enable hypothesis generation, not to ask some very open-ended vague question to replace a human expert. And also the fact that we had infused domain knowledge in the AI models that we used to label these vast amount of data sets to begin with. Again, a very early stage work which continues to evolve, and will keep you posted as this story evolves a lot more. Another example which I want to share was is of outside of Elucidata, where we were collaborating with this company, where we again took more than 10,000 data sets, mostly publicly available molecular data set on different stages of cell differentiation, and based on that we could we enabled a signature, a molecular signature, which allowed for patient stratification. Now, again, the key things that we took care of upfront was to ask a very specific question, clean the data, have a very specific context, not just about biomedical data, but also some specific biology of stem cell differentiation to come up with the signatures. And again, hopefully this illustrates that if those de-risking initiatives are part of a plan from early on, the promise of AI gets realized, and you have some substantial benefits and acceleration in your R&D program. And we're very excited about this company, this collaborator that we work with, where they are taking this patient stratification model as part of their clinical design as they start the clinical programs. So again, for us, the key takeaways have been that there's a clear interest and a growing adoption in AI and the promise of AI in biopharma. A lot of the talking points are now turning into real stories which have impacted companies and hopefully eventually patients. That has begun to happen. But at the same time, there are some very clear risks to the promise of AI, which we have benefited from taking care of. And we would like to argue that anyone who's thinking of initiating or starting an AI initiative should spend some time, dedicate some resources to de-risk them before proceeding. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I think it's just on time, but again, thank you, and I hope you guys all enjoy the rest of the talks and sessions. Again, thank you for joining us, and let's have a wonderful DataFAIR 2022.
Thanks, Abhishek, for this interesting perspective. Hope to see more adoption of data centricity. We have some time to go through one of the Q&A questions. I'll read the question, and Abhishek can answer the question here. The question is, what is the prerequisite for a service consumer of Poly to seamlessly integrate it in their system?
What is the first part? What is the?
What is the prerequisite for a service consumer of Poly to seamlessly integrate it in their system?
I'm not sure I fully understand the first part. Service user?
That is the exact question, but I think what they're asking is what would be the requisite, what would they need to actually have Poly integrated with their system? So what kind of maybe the background, like the platform or something that they can integrate it?
Yeah, so I'll take a shot at this. I hope I touch the relevant points. So as a company, we have taken a very contrarian stance, if you will, of being a code-first platform. What that means is that you can stream, clean, and link data to any platform of your choice. You could, for example, that would be SageMaker, where you could run your ML models. That could be Spotfire, where you could make nice, useful, insightful dashboards, or it could be any Jupyter Notebook environment that you deal with. What that also implies is we are betting that a more powerful way to leverage data is through a code-first approach, which also implicitly and explicitly requires a particular skill set. So our audience most often are data scientists who are comfortable in Python and R, and so that they can leverage and run powerful queries on the data. And should they want to do it outside of Poly, that is enabled because of the code-first approach. And I believe that's an important stance to take, because the nature of questions that you ask in R&D are often very iterative, and it requires a lot of back and forth. It's hard to, if not impossible, to build a dashboard which would address a variety of use cases like that.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Abhishek.
Thank you. Yeah, let's enjoy the rest of the DataFAIR.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.